At the start of this year, I had the plan to try more eyeshadow palettes, and I definitely did. I think last year, the year of 2023, I tried, I think, 30 palettes, and this year I think I'm close to 80. Maybe there are even 80 palettes here. I did my very best, but at a certain point there are just so many things to rank. There are so many reasons to rank. A lot of this ranking is really based on my excitement for a palette, is really based on vibes, also of course on quality and color story, and I've thought about it a lot. And I've been switching around these palettes so much, you wouldn't believe it. Like, these have been on a table for, I don't know, over 2 weeks, and I've been just switching and switching and switching. But at a certain point you just have to stop and just film the video, and that is what I'm doing today. I have so many palettes here. Don't take this ranking too literally. Really look at around where these palettes land. Let's get into it. Alright, the worst palette of the year for me was very clear, and that is this Catrice Seeking Flowers eyeshadow palette. This was absolutely terrible. I have to be honest, I only did one look, but it said enough. I did the swatches, I did the look. It was terrible. The mattes in here are so lightly pigmented, like they almost do nothing on the eyes, and then the shimmers are super weird. They are not smooth, they look really dry and crepey. Absolutely terrible formula. This was not for me. I did not force myself to use it again. I decluttered it. This wasn't my worst of the year. That's all you need to know. Then honestly, I did debate putting this in the last place as well, but I do feel like there are some things in here, there are some things happening here that push it up a little bit more, but I did have to put it way towards the bottom because it's an expensive palette that really didn't work for me. So this is the Clarity Cosmetics The Lost Kingdom eyeshadow palette. I did a video with this and I did try it again after that just to make sure if I couldn't make it work, but honestly the shimmers in this are so loose in the pan. It's really like applying sand to your eye, and you can use a glitter glue, you can try to make it work or wet it or things like that, but because it's so loose and flaky, it becomes super thick and crepey looking on the eye, which I think is super unflattering. Next to that, this is a really hard color story for me to use. I did pick it out myself, could have known that, but if the quality was good, I could have combined it with something. I feel like there are really only deep colors in here, except for maybe this minty shade. It's all very deep. It's a bit hard to do like a full look with that. So the color story, the fact that this is very expensive and just those very loose shimmers makes this like one of the worst palettes of the year for sure. Then this Catrice Generation Joy palette, I just don't think that this is giving any of the vibes that I want an eyeshadow palette to have. It's just looking very unappealing. It's a very hard to use color story. I didn't love the quality in this. If the color story was better, I could have tried to make it work, but honestly this was not amazing. This was not anything special. This is not anything I would tell you to pick up. It was pretty lackluster. Then another pretty lackluster palette that, I don't know, maybe isn't the worst quality ever, but I just hated every look that I did with this. This is the Safari Fever eyeshadow palette by Catrice. This is from their Slim eyeshadow palette line. If you like soft tones, warm tones, kind of like these khaki shades, this might work for you, but I really hated this on myself. It is so muted and soft, and the formulas were all very soft. And I feel like if this were my perfect color story, I could live with a softer look if it was a little bit more like pinky or mauve or anything like that. But just the fact that these formulas aren't anything special and then that the shades aren't for me, I thought it was going to be a bit more neutral, but it all pulls pretty warm. And that's something you're gonna see throughout this video. I don't really love warm tones. They don't really suit me. They're not my preference. So yeah, this is not my type of color story. Then one that I tried pretty recently is the Essence and Up eyeshadow palette. This is the one in 01 Adventures Ahead. There was also a more green one in this line. I only bought the kind of like warm neutral one. This one is just shades to get basically the same look every time. I don't think that this quality is absolutely terrible. Like, it's workable, it's usable, and I think from now on that is kind of like the space we're in when it comes to the eyeshadow palettes. It's all usable, it's not terrible quality, but this is just very uninspiring. I feel like if you have 12 shades, there's so much you can do, but then they're all kind of like same. and all of the shimmers just look very similar on the eye. It was not needed for this to be a 12 pan, and also just these colors aren't for me. It isn't bad, like everything works, but that's all I can really say about it. Then we have the Catrice The Joker eyeshadow palette. This is the one in 010, The Joke's on You. And I was quite excited about this palette because it is purple, we have some lime, we have some kind of like shifty shades. It is a pretty cool palette, but once again I feel like there are a lot of similar shades in here, and also some of these mattes just didn't really blend. Some of the shimmers were just pretty soft. Like if you pick the exact right shades, you can do a pretty cute look with this. Also this shade over here, the shade Mayhem, is pretty cool. It's pretty shiny, it's shifty, but honestly I wouldn't buy the palette for that. There's a Space Glam Chrome eyeshadow from Catrice that has the same kind of like look on the eye that I would tell you to buy instead of this palette. I just feel like this could have been like half the palette and you could have gotten the same looks. If this would have been half the palette and it would have just had the key shades that you need to do the look, and the quality of the mattes were a little bit better, this definitely would have been higher. I had really high hopes for this. Also the packaging is really cool. Like this could have been something really nice, but they just missed the mark for me. And then we have this Essence eyeshadow palette that was in the Make My Heart Sparkle Advent Calendar. This is a 6 pan and it's just nothing really special. There's also one Dutch shade in here. Like this shade doesn't do anything on the eye, but this shade is actually a really nice kind of like greenish iridescent topper. So for that it gets a few more points. If that wasn't in here, then this would have been further down. This is actually pretty cute, but at the same time nothing special. It's something that I'm gonna forget about. It's something that I'm gonna declare pretty soon. Probably I'm gonna be like, oh, but that one green iridescent shade, but then I will forget about it again. So yeah, too forgettable to be higher up. Then I debated putting this one higher, because I do sort of like the quality of it, but the fact that this one is a boot, like on the one side that was sort of the reason that I bought it, but on the other side it's not gonna excite me as much as some other products, as some other eyeshadow palettes with really great packaging. So this is the Revolution and Toy Story collab eyeshadow palette. This is the palette in the shape of a boot. I did a video on this, a first impression video on this collection. Honestly, the quality in here is pretty nice. The red is pretty pigmented. I recently did more of a like warm tone neutral look, which was pretty nice. Like we have some nice shimmers in here with some different textures. Like this definitely isn't bad, but I thought it was gonna be a little bit more cool toned. It's pretty warm toned and just, it's a boot. It's a boot. It's not gonna be super exciting. If this were my perfect color story, I could look past it. But yeah, that isn't the case. It is better than expected, but it wasn't enough to like bump this up the ranking. Next up, we have another Revolution eyeshadow palette. This is the Burn Book eyeshadow palette, and honestly, I think the packaging of this is pretty cute. It's squishy, it feels kind of cool. I like what they did with it. It's very on theme. And then we have the color story, which is a little bit more fun and seems a little bit more up my alley than the other eyeshadow palette. Like I definitely was very excited about this when I first saw it, when I first got it. And you know, there's something about this palette. It is pretty nice quality. I do like a lot of the shimmers. I feel like the mattes blend pretty well. Overall, I've been quite enjoying the Revolution eyeshadow formula, which we will see later on in the ranking. I have been trying a lot of Revolution this year. I think I didn't try everything that they came out with, but I tried a lot. But for some reason, basically every look that I did with this, I didn't really love on myself. And I think that the colors just pull a little bit too warm. Like the shades that you have to kind of like build up the crease, they turn kind of like peachy on the eye, and I didn't really love it on myself. I think if this is your perfect color story, like this is a pretty good formula. It's not the best of the best, but it's pretty good. And if this color story ended up on my eye a little bit more, what I imagined could have been higher, but that didn't happen. And then we have the Essence Love Luck and Dragons eyeshadow palette. I actually think this is a pretty cute palette. It's a pretty good packaging. Like Essence doesn't always do good packaging for their products. This I think is pretty nice. It's cardboard, it's sleek. I do like the picture on the front of the dragon. This one is in 01 Follow the Dragon Sparks. This was released like a year ago, and I think the quality in this is actually really nice. And we do have some like really nice shades. some good combinations of mattes and shimmers. This palette makes a lot of sense. It's just a little bit too warm and bright for me, and I just didn't end up using it again, even though I think this is really great quality, and I think this is one of my favorite palettes I've tried from Essence. I would love to see more like this in different color stories. They have moved away quite a bit from eyeshadow palettes. I would absolutely love to see something like this again, like in this format. Then we have the Flower Nose Midsummer Fairy Tales eyeshadow palette that I have. This one is in 03 Fairy Melody, and this one is not bad quality once again, but this just didn't end up being my color story. I thought that this didn't really suit me, and for a very colorful color story, for a very colorful eyeshadow palette, I didn't feel like I had a lot of options in here. I either want something colorful with different options to kind of play around with, or if I only have like 1 or 2 looks, I'd rather have it be neutral. And so this didn't give me any of the things I want. Didn't feel beautiful while wearing it. It just wasn't exactly for me. Like this type of green, like especially this kind of like mossy green, I just feel like it makes me look kind of sick. So yeah, this didn't end up being it. I thought it was fun to see a more colorful color story from Flower Notes, and that's why I bought it. I did want to try it out, but I have tried another eyeshadow palette that is a little bit more colorful from them as well this year. That is quite high up. Like there's also some in the middle, but this one definitely wasn't my favorite when it came to Flower Notes this year. Then I tried this quad by Kiko Milano. This is the Bright Quartet eyeshadow palette in 02. This is a pretty good quality. The mattes blended well, the shimmers blended well. We have a lighter matte and a deeper matte, and a lighter shimmer and a deeper shimmer. This wasn't bad, but I just didn't feel like it suited me. There was something weird about the undertones and how it kind of like meshed with my skin. When looking at it, I thought that's gonna be my quad. It's gonna be my eyeshadow palette. I can dip into this time and time again, but every time I wore it, I just didn't feel like it really worked with my skin tone. So this ended up a little lower. Then I'm putting the two Let's Pop eyeshadow palettes by GlossGods together here. I do really like the color stories of these. I do really like the concept of these. It's just the fact that these shimmers did crease on me pretty quickly. I still have to give them another go, see if I can make these shimmers last a little bit longer on me. This is the pink one, as you can see. Do really like how light it goes, how deep it goes, the options you have, the bright shimmers. This had a lot of potential. I think if these hadn't creased on me as much, this would have been way higher. And then we have this purple one, just really beautiful. I love the tones in here. It's just not exactly practical if shimmers crease on you that quickly. Then I have this Romand quad. This is the pink and black quad. This has 4 mattes, 1 matte with a shimmer, but basically all 4 mattes. When you apply them to the eye, this is pretty basic. It goes from light to deep. Nothing really to complain about, but it's also not super special. Then here I have the first eyeshadow palette that I tried from the Catrice X Finding Jewelry collab. This is the one in Great Barrier Reef 020. This one is just pretty monotone. Like there are a lot of similar shades. It doesn't go very deep and it's pretty warm. I do like kind of like the look that I can get out of it. I do like this kind of like corally look from time to time. I just feel once again it is very one noted for a pretty big palette. I do quite like the packaging. Like they did a pretty good job with that. It looks fun, it looks summery, and there's definitely potential here, but I just would love for them to kind of branch out a little bit when it comes to their like Disney collab kind of palettes. I feel like the color stories are always kind of like this, a lot of very similar shades. Like I could take out half of this and still get the same looks. Alright, we're still in the don't love the color story, do like the quality territory. This is the first of the Kiko Milano X Bridgerton quads that I have. And this one is in the shade 03 Romantic Rhapsody. I really like the quality of this. I think the mattes in here are very pigmented, very blendable. I do really love the shimmer formula that is in these quads. I just didn't love this color on me. I don't know what it is, because when I'm looking at it in the pen, I would think that it would really suit me. And I do love pinks. I do love this kind of colors. It's kind of similar-ish, it seems, in tone to what I'm wearing right now. But for some reason, it just didn't work that well on me, even though I really love the quality, so that's why it's a little lower. Then another Kiko Milano palette. This is the Magnetic Nights Party Glam eyeshadow palette in 01 Natural Born Elegant. This is just a pretty basic palette. The quality is pretty good. The shimmer is a little bit on the satin side, but it isn't bad. I think the tones in here are nice, and they are nice for a basic look. I can see myself reaching back into this and just popping another kind of shimmer on the lid. This isn't bad, it's just not shockingly amazing and beautiful to me. It's not inspiring. Then we have the Kiko Milano Days in Bloom Multifaceted Eyeshadow Palette. And this packaging is just the absolute cutest. I love what they did with this collection. Like, this is really nice. It's not exactly something that hasn't been done before. I do feel like they were inspired by Chantecaille, but I do like that we have it for a more affordable price. And then the actual color story in this is very soft, very muted. We have some softer shimmers. We have 3 mattes that are really, really light. This is definitely for a super light, super soft look. It's a little bit too light and soft for me. I did declutter it, but at the same time it looks really fun. It looks fresh. It looks like a nice spring look. I just think if one of these mattes were a little deeper, this would have been more versatile. Now it's a little too light. Even though I like a light look, it's just not giving me enough options. Then we have this Revolution eyeshadow palette. This is a Revolution Hyper Real eyeshadow palette, and this is an all shimmer palette. And I think this was one of the first things I tried from Revolution this year. And after this, it kind of like became the year of Revolution for me. I really like discovered the brand. And I do like the quality in here. There are some really nice shimmers in here. It could have been higher if there were actually like mattes in here as well. Now it's a little bit like, am I gonna reach for these shimmers or other shimmers? Probably other shimmers in the end. Like, even though these are really cute, they are not my absolute favorite shimmer formula. And some of these shimmers, they were a little creasy on me. This is a super creamy shade. It just creased a little bit too quickly on me. I do like the concept of it. I do like some of the looks that I've done with it. It's a pretty good all shimmer palette. It's especially good for the price, but I have other all shimmer palettes that I would definitely reach for over this. Then we have this Catrice palette. This is the Festive Treasures multi-use palette. All I Want Is Velvet. And this one has some cheek products, some cream cheek products, and some eyeshadows as well. We're just talking about the eyeshadows today. The eyeshadow quality of this is pretty nice, but the color story is not super revolutionary. I think if this purple were a little bit like more impactful, it's pretty satiny, maybe I would like it a little better. I would rank it a little higher. Overall, I think it's a pretty cute look that you can do with this, but it's not like extremely inspiring. I feel all of it together is a pretty nice palette. I do like what they did with this. I do like that we got some eyeshadows for the holiday collection, but there's an eyeshadow palette. There are some more eyeshadow palettes by Catrice that I tried this year that I liked more because they gave me some more options. Like, this felt a little bit limiting. I do like having more shades. Next up, I have here the Essence and Harlequin eyeshadow palette in 01 Hey Puddin'. This was the more pink one from the line. This once again is an eyeshadow palette that has a lot of colors but not a lot of looks. Like, most of the looks are gonna look the same except for this shade, like this slightly dark shade that can take the look a little bit in a different direction. I feel like all of these shimmers look pretty similar-ish. All of the mattes look pretty similar-ish. I do like the quality of this. It's not amazing quality, but it's pretty good, and I do like the look that I can get out of it. I do like kind of like a softer pinkish look. That's why it's a little higher, but I still feel like this is not versatile enough. Then we have another Catrice and Finding Dory palette. This is the one in 010 Just Keep Swimming. Once again, quite like the packaging. Honestly, I don't hate the shape as much as I thought. I do think it suits the palette. Once again, it's a pretty one-noted color story, but it's a type of look that I love to do. It's a cool tone neutral look. Some of these shimmers are pretty nice and some of the mattes are also pretty nice. It's just, it doesn't go super deep. If this would have had a 1 or 2 deeper shades, this could have been higher. I do think the quality is good, and I would see myself reaching back into this palette because I love this type of look. But I just feel like they use way too many shades that are very similar. Then this one I didn't really expect to like this much, but in the end, every time I do a look with it, it looks so good. And this is the Nude eyeshadow palette, the Pure Nude eyeshadow palette by Catrice. It is pretty basic, it's pretty standard. You're gonna get like 1 or 2 different looks, but the shimmers in here are beautifully satin. Like, they are not super glowy, but they look super flattering on the eye. The mattes work well. It's just a super basic look that is very flattering, very beautiful, feels luxurious, but it's like, it's one look in a palette. But I do really enjoy it. I have done several looks with this, all pretty much the same, but it just looks so good. Then next up I have here the NYX Ultimate Battle Plan eyeshadow palette. This was from the Home Alone collab that they did for holiday this year. This is a pretty fun color story. I do quite like the formula in here, but it's not absolutely amazing. I feel like this could have been a little bit better. I've done some really cute looks with this. The shimmers are pretty like sparkly shimmery. They miss a little bit of binder. I feel like if they had a little bit more binder, they would be easier to use. Now they're kind of like flying all over. They are just a little bit dry. I do feel like this gives me some options. It's a neutral palette, but it has some pops of color. You can do a pretty fun like green look with this. You can go a little bit more purple. You can go a little bit more red. I did like the options. I did in the end like the looks that I did, but I don't really see myself going back into this. Then this was quite a nice surprise. This is the Cozy Glow Eye and Cheek Palette by Catrice, and I do really love the cheek products in here, but we cannot talk about that. But I think it's good to know if you're like thinking about buying this palette on my recommendation. Like, these cheek products are really beautiful. I think that this quad makes a lot of sense. You can get a really nice look. The mattes are pigmented. The shimmers are nice, smooth, but not like super impactful, like super blinding or anything like that. It is just a cute look. It's a cozy look. It fits the vibe. I like the names. It's just giving me all the fall feels, and like it just hits the spot, I think. Like, it's not super interesting. It is just one look, but I did really like it when I did this look, and I have done it multiple times. Next up, we have another Makeup Revolution eyeshadow palette. This is the Forever Flawless in Temptation, and I have been really enjoying the formula of the Forever Flawless palettes that I've tried this year. This is the first year that I have tried any of them, and I've been really impressed. I do really love the quality in here. I think this is a pretty fun color story because we have some more neutral shades, we have some slightly cooler leaning shades, and then we have some warmer shades. There are some really nice textures in here. Some of the shimmers are a little bit more satin, so they are satins. Then we have some more sparkly ones to kind of like top over it. The only reason that this is a little lower and it's lower than the other Forever Flawless palettes is that it is a little bit too warm tone for me. It's giving me a lot of looks that I don't really like go for. It has a black, it has a really warm yellow, like yellowy gold. It's not really for me. This is not super inspiring. It feels a little bit more like a basic color story, and then it's also not a basic color story that I would go for because I don't mind a very basic color story. So I do really love the quality, and I would recommend it if you think that is exactly what I'm looking for. Then I have here two Flower Nose eyeshadow palettes. These have just the most amazing packaging, and I do really love the color stories of these, but the quality wasn't exactly up to par, so that's why they are a little lower. I feel if the quality was a little better, these would have been definitely higher. So here we have the one in Eden's Angel. This is 01. The shimmers in here are amazing. I do love the color story. It's just that these mattes don't really blend that well into each other. Makes it a little hard to use. These are not towards the bottom because I do feel like there are a lot of looks that I can still do with this. Like more like one matte and then one shimmer. And I do really like the vibe of this. I do really like the packaging. I just wish that the quality was a little bit better. Then we have here 02, and this is in Weeping Angel, and I feel like this one is the hardest to use. This color story doesn't make as much sense to me as that neutral one, especially because we have a really dark blue shimmer and not really a matte to pair with it, which makes it a little bit hard to use. Once again, the same issue where the mattes don't really blend that well into each other, but kind of like taking everything like separately from each other, you can do like pretty nice things with this. Like the formulas of the shimmers are really nice. It's just something where I'm gonna do kind of like one matte and one shimmer, and that does limit me a little bit too much. I wish this quality was better because I do love the vibe, I do love the packaging. It just wasn't exactly it. Then I have here the Kiko Milano eyeshadow palette that I tried from the holiday collection, the Holiday Wanderlust collection. This is the Festive Flash eyeshadow palette, and this one is a pretty cute formula. It's a pretty cute eyeshadow palette. It's kind of like a cool tone neutral palette with some softer shimmers, and we have a teal here that you can do some fun looks with. This is pretty nice, but it's not the best quality that I've tried by far from Kiko Milano this year. It just works. And the color story makes sense. I don't really have any issues with it. It just isn't elevated. Then we have the Catrice eyeshadow palette from the Advent calendar from this year. This is the one in... It doesn't have a name. It's just Catrice eyeshadow palette. And this one, I think is pretty cute. It has a nice color story. We have some neutrals. We have some colorful tones. I only didn't like this purple shimmer when I used this in my look when I opened and tried the advent calendar. This wasn't working for me, but I've been doing different looks with this. The other shimmers work really well. I do really love the combination of kind of like these neutrals and then the colorful shades. I do like this selection of mattes we have here. The shimmers beside that purple work well. I do really like this color story. I would love to see more from Catrice like this because this makes a lot of sense. It feels a little luxurious. It feels kind of fun but also usable. Then I have here another Kiko Milano palette. This is a Glamour Multi-Finish eyeshadow palette in 04. And this one seems pretty boring. Its swatch is pretty boring, but when you do a look with this, it actually turns out pretty nice. It's kind of like, you don't think it's gonna be something, but then the end result is like a really beautiful look. I guess it's the quality of the mattes, like they blend really well. The shimmers just show up a little bit more interestingly than you would think on the eye, especially this one and this one are a little bit more textured. I thought that this was a pretty cute palette, but now that I'm looking at it again, I'm like, what even is this? It looks so like soft and subtle and not like something I would enjoy, but I did really like the looks that it did with this. Another Kiko Milano palette, and this is the one in Gold Reflections Sun Mirage eyeshadow palette, and this is in 01 Golden Sunrise. This quality is pretty nice. The shimmers are really beautiful, the mattes work well. We don't have a lot of options in the mattes. It doesn't give you a lot of different looks, but the look that you can get, this kind of like warm tone neutral look, is pretty cute. I do like the fact that this leans a little bit more bronzy peachy. That makes it a little bit more usable for me when I go into warm tones. It's more kind of like those bronzes and peaches than kind of like really orangey warm yellows. So I did end up liking the looks that I did with this. Like, this is a pretty cute palette. And then here we have the Sigma Ambiance palette. They did send this to me in PR. This is my first time trying the Sigma formula. I did really like the way this mattes blended. I did really like the formula of the shimmers. Some of the shimmers are a little bit more smooth. Some of them are a little bit more textured. I do feel like you can get a pretty nice impactful look out of this. I didn't have any issues with this. It is just not a palette that I would have purchased myself because it's very warm, it's very toasty. It has those tones that I don't really go into. I just don't love this on myself, but I do really like the quality, and because of that I would consider trying Sigma in the future. Like, I do think they do a great job with their formula. It's a little bit like, it's not really like an indie feeling formula. It's an indie brand, but they do more kind of like almost a more luxury feeling formula. I do enjoy it, but it's not like this palette. This particular palette is really like knocking my socks off. Alright, we are getting into great quality and color stories that are more up my alley. Like, we are getting into some good stuff. So this was a year I gave Nomad another chance. This is a Nomad 3G5 Lace Intense Color Palette, and I did really enjoy it. First up, the packaging of this is absolutely amazing. It just feels like touching a painting. It is so cool. It's absolutely beautiful. One of the best packagings of eyeshadow palettes I have seen this year. And then the actual color story is really beautiful, really fun. And the formulas in here are also really nice. I felt like everything worked well. The shimmers are really shiny. The mattes are really pigmented and blendable. I don't really have complaints about this palette. The reason that it's a little lower is that it's not a palette that I feel right now like, okay, I want to get back into that. Like, I've done a few looks with it and I've really enjoyed them, but now I'm not feeling like super inspired by it. I do love the fact that with this shade and this shade you can get a little bit more of a pinky look, and I do love my pink looks. I think this is a fun palette, but probably I need to take a little bit of a step away from it before I like go back into it, because I just feel like I've done a blue look, I've done a red pinky look, I've done a look with the yellows. What else is there to do? Maybe it's me. Maybe it's because I just love like neutral pinky purpley looks and these are not my go-to shades. Probably that's it. But I still think this is a really beautiful palette. I'm glad that I tried it. The formula is really nice. Then I have here the Icy Nude by Huda Beauty. This was the first year that I tried a Huda Beauty palette in many years. And I do think this is a nice color story. I do really like the formulas in here. We have some really nice shiny shades, some different textures in the shimmers. Do hate with a passion the fact that they put in a pressed glitter. I've heard more people complaining about this pressed glitter, and I wholeheartedly agree. This is absolutely terrible. It's a throwaway shade. It's like that Petri dish shade or anything else. Like, why are they putting this in? There's some really interesting flaky textured shades. I think my favorite shimmer is probably the shade Aurora. It's like this cool tone mauve, very smooth shimmer. It's really beautiful. I think this works really well, and I do like the vision of the palette. I do feel like some of the shades just pull very similar on the eye, so it kind of feels like you don't get as many looks as you would think. Also, I do like the fact that this has a lot of contrast. We have some really deep shades, we have some really light shades. I just feel like if this would have been condensed down a little bit, and if that shimmer, like this glitter, wouldn't have been there, this could have been higher. Now I do really enjoy the palette because I do really enjoy the looks that I do with it. It's just the fact that this is a more expensive palette and it just isn't perfect. Then we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Charma eyeshadow palette. The Unearthly Cosmetics formula is one of my favorite formulas that exists in the world, in the indie world. I do really love Unearthly Cosmetics, but this color story wasn't exactly my thing. Like, I did want to have these shades in the Unearthly formula. I still stand by the fact that I bought this palette. I just feel like it just doesn't feel that cohesive. I feel like if you had some lighter shades, if you maybe had a little bit of difference in the shimmer, maybe this quad here doesn't make that much sense. Like, it's a little bit of a strange color story. It's a little bit of a strange palette. I do love the formulas. I do think I can go back into this, kind of not look at this and go back into this for a nice purple look, because I do really enjoy that. I just feel like this color story could have been done a little better. Then Revolution came out with the Icon eyeshadow palettes this year, and these are two that I put a little lower. There are also two that I put a little higher. Here I have the Icon palette in the Eternal Icon. This is a little bit more warm green. If you know me, then you know that warm greens are my thing, but I can really appreciate this color story. I can really appreciate this combination of kind of like neutrals, kind of like mauve, brownish, reddish tones, and then those green shades. And I do really like the formula in this. I think they did a really great job with these. The only thing I don't really love is that packaging, but besides that, I think this is really, really nice. I even like the creams in this, and usually I don't like cream eyeshadows because I have really oily eyelids and usually they crease. If I apply these cream eyeshadows with a finger, they will stay on. I don't use them purely as my base. I do use an eyeshadow base underneath it. But yeah, I think this is a great color story. It's a very affordable palette. We have some nice contrast in here. You can do some really nice looks with this. This isn't my favorite one from the bunch. Like, this is my least favorite one, but I do really like where Revolution is headed with these, and I do think the quality is really nice. This one I liked a little bit better, and this is the Smoky Icon one. This once again has quite a nice contrast. We have some really nice tones. I do feel like there could have been a little bit more variation in the mattes over here, but I can go a really long way with these two shades because it's kind of like this smoky purple and a dark brown. Like, that gets me really far. I can do some really good looks with that. I do like the shimmer shades that we have, and I don't know, I did do some really nice looks with this. This is the type of color story that I do really like. Once again, I do really like the formula. I just feel like if they would have made them maybe a little bit more expensive, because now they are like 10 euros or something like that, a little bit more expensive, and just had a little bit better packaging, this could have been like top 10 maybe. Then I have my second and final quad from the Kiko Milano and Bridgerton collection. This one is in 02 Ballroom Bliss. For some reason, I just love this one so much more on me. I love the tone of this matte in the crease. I love this kind of like bronzy shade, and I love the purple as well. The looks I got from this, I just really enjoyed. Once again, the formula of this is amazing, and just these tones, they just did something to me. I really love them on myself. And then we have the Glam Shop Santorini eyeshadow palette. This was the first year that I tried Glam Shop, and this was the first palette that I tried from them. This is not a super inspiring color story, but I do really love the formulas in here. I did get a lot of actually really nice looks out of this, and I did get some compliments while wearing this eyeshadow palette. I do feel like the kind of warm tone neutral palette with a pop of blue is just a little bit dated. It just doesn't feel super inspiring to me, but the formulas, the shimmers, and the textures in here are really nice. The mattes blended really well. This palette did convince me to try more Glam Shop, but this on its own is not gonna be like a super favorite, I think. Like, it's mainly the color story that bump this down a few spots. And then we have the Lunar Beauty Moonshroom eyeshadow palette, and this eyeshadow palette is really beautiful. Love the quality. We go from really light to really deep. Beautiful shimmers. It's just a little bit warm and murky. I don't personally love this color story, but I do love the fact that we have some options to go a little bit more purple, to go a little bit more neutral. Of course, I knew what I was getting myself into, and I do love having this for the looks that I like to do with this type of color story. But there are just some shades in here that I personally wouldn't really reach for a lot. But I do understand the existence, of course, of this color story in the line. I also think that this is gonna be a favorite for a lot of people, because a lot of people nowadays do love these murky tones and murky greens. It's just not my absolute favorite. Then we have this Flower Nose Butterfly Cloud Color Collection Embossed 6 color makeup palette. This is 03 Intense Purple Haze. This is a cool toned mauvey purpley color story. I do really love the formulas in here. I do feel like this works really well. It's gonna give you like 1 or 2 different looks, but I'm fine with that because this is the type of colors that I really like to wear. It works well. It's a nice color story. It's not like giving me all the different options. It's not as inspiring to me as some other eyeshadow palettes that I've tried from Flower Nose in the past, but I do like it. And we have the first of 3 After the Last Airbender and Lethal Cosmetics palettes that I have. This is the Earth palette, and honestly, I wasn't lying for, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours to get the collection. And by the time I got through, I was on a website. It had taken me so long. I was so stressed. I was like, you know what? I'll just throw this in as well with the other palettes. I know it's not going to be my perfect color story, but I don't want to have to go back. I don't want to change my mind and then have to go back in line. So I did buy this one, and I have to say the color story of this is really beautiful. I love the options we have in here. Like, we still have this kind of like reddish brown option, and we have some kind of like more cool toned green. Like, there are some things that I can still do with this. I do think that the shimmers in here are beautiful. The mattes blend really well. This is an amazing formula. Love the packaging. It just feels very truly After the Last Airbender, and I do really love the series, so I love to see a collab that is so well executed. It's just not my personal perfect color story, so that's why it's a little lower than the other palettes. After the first 4 icon palette, Makeup Revolution came out with another one for their holiday collection, and this is the Muse icon from like their kind of like metals collection. This is a color story that is really up my alley, but it does miss a few things to really be perfect. But I do really love like the direction this is going in. I love the formulas. Once again, really beautiful shimmers in this. I really love kind of like a gray, purple, pinky, neutral color story. That is something that I can really enjoy. I love combining grays with slightly warmer tones because I feel like grays are slightly harsh on me, but if I combine them with a pink, then I really enjoy it. I love the options for the creams here. I think if this black would have been like a super dark brown or just like kind of like a grayish brown shade, this could have been even higher. Now it is really like a soft neutral look or a soft purplish pinkish neutral look. So I don't have that many options personally from this, but I do think this is a very well executed palette. Once again, I feel like they could have added a little bit of variation in the mattes. Like, these two are a little similar-ish for a relatively small palette. I feel like if one of them maybe would have been like a darker shade or just a different tone, a little bit more pinky, this would have been even more versatile. I do think this is going to be a palette that I go into more often because I do really like the tones in this. It is just like this black I'm never really gonna use, and then I don't have that many options. Then I have here the All I Ever Wanted palette by Unearthly Cosmetics. I bought this because I knew that I really love the Unearthly Cosmetics shimmer formula. In the end, I didn't end up using it that much, and I do feel like for the person that I am today, for being a YouTuber, this doesn't really make a lot of sense for me. Like, even though I love this formula, I love the colors, I could really see myself using this in like a different world. This is not gonna be the thing like for me now, because I do a lot of testing of eyeshadow palettes. I do a lot of different looks, and it doesn't often happen that I'm doing a look where I'm missing a shimmer or where I want to combine different palettes together. I don't really do that anymore. I used to do that before I was on YouTube, and now it's not really a thing anymore. So even though I think this is super beautiful, I think an all shimmer palette, at least for this year, for me, didn't make a lot of sense. So I haven't been using it a lot. It has not been my go-to. I feel like I bought this kind of with my former self in mind, but I've discovered that this isn't the thing anymore. But I'm definitely gonna keep this in my collection, see if I will use it more maybe next year. But I just think that buying a full palette of special shades for the price that this is, because this is like 80 euros, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me. Next up I have here the GlossGods Let's Get Nude eyeshadow palette, and this is a warm tone neutral palette that they came out with over the summer. I think this is a really beautiful color story. You go from really light to really deep. We have a lot of different tones in the shimmers. The shimmers by GlossGods are always super beautiful, really stunning. We have a really nice multi-chrome here. This is just a little bit too warm toned to be higher up, but it is very beautiful. This does inspire me. It is not too warm tone, like it's leaning warm, but it still has kind of like these more sandy tones, and it's kind of like chocolate brown. So there's still a lot to be done with this palette for someone who doesn't really love warm tones. Like, it's not oranges. I do really like it. It's just I like some other palettes more. Then I have here the Unearthly High Temp eyeshadow palette, and this one once again is one that I bought knowing it wasn't gonna be my perfect palette, but there was just something about this that inspired me so much, even though I knew I wasn't gonna be using all of these shades. So this bottom row is absolutely perfectly up my alley. I really love these options. I love all the shimmers, love this kind of like cooler tone light yellow. I love combining that with the mauves. Like, that is really inspiring to me. Like, it gives me an option that I wouldn't really have thought of myself, and that is also something that I love palettes for. Like, that is why I love to buy palettes, because sometimes they put colors together that I wouldn't have thought of. What I wouldn't really use is like the orange and the warm yellow, but besides that I would basically use all the colors in here, and I do really love just the inspiration of this. I love this color story so much. It's just so inspiring to me, even though it isn't perfectly practical for me, and I just think this is a really well done palette, beautiful quality. I totally understand it, and I don't regret buying it. I can still see myself going into this a lot. Then I have here the Glaminatrix Sugar and Spice eyeshadow palette. I do believe that this launched last year. I didn't try it then, but this year I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try it. I'm just gonna try finally this eyeshadow palette. I did hear people say that the color story didn't make like total sense to them, but I do love kind of like a cool tone neutral, so I think I can make it work. And I think that the quality in here is nice, works well. I do love a lot of the shades. The shimmers are really beautiful. There's just something where I feel like a little limited when it comes to the matte, which makes this whole palette feel a little bit limiting. Once again, we have a black in here. I just don't use black. It's just not my thing. It's not the type of look that I want to do. I feel like it's a little bit too harsh. And then we kind of have only these two shades to really like build up like depth in the crease, and that is not enough for me. This is a very shimmer and pastel heavy palette, and I do really like the colors that we have in here. I just feel like some things could be added to make this a little bit more user friendly. Maybe take away like one of these three shades, because I feel like they have a pretty similar like function in the look. Overall, I think this is a cute palette. I'm glad that I have it because I do really love the shimmers in here, but it's not really super inspiring. It's not that I look at it and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do that and that look. We are getting to the top. We are getting to the favorites, like what we're talking about now. I all really enjoyed this year. First up, one of the surprises by Kike Milano this year was this Cosmic Gaze eyeshadow palette in 02 Under the Starry Sky from the Stellar Love collection. This is a 6-pan that just gives you more options than what you can really see when you first look at it. These two mattes, they can really go kind of like either way. Like, they can go a little bit more burgundy, a little bit more brown. This one can go a little bit more gray or a little bit more purpley, depending on what you pair it with the shimmers. You can kind of mix and match. You can top the shimmers over it. You have a lot more options with this than you think. Also, the quality is really nice. I've really enjoyed the looks that I've done with this. I really thought this was such a fun, kind of surprising palette. Another Makeup Revolution palette. This is the Revolution Forever Flawless in Astro Nova, and this one also kind of surprised me because I thought this was not really gonna be my color story. It has a lot of kind of like murky green colors. I thought, I'm just gonna try it, see how I feel. At least it has some purples, it has some neutrals, but I did really end up enjoying the looks that I've done with this. I've done some really pretty looks. It just works really well. Like the mattes are pigmented, they blend really well. Really love the lighter shades in here as well. Love the different textures in the shimmers. These palettes don't swatch amazingly. I don't feel like the swatches do them really that much justice, but just doing the looks, they all come out really nicely. It's like the proof is in the pudding. Like, don't really look at what you think it's gonna be. Don't think about the fact that it's Makeup Revolution. Don't look at the swatches, just do a look and you'll see that it's really beautiful. Like, I've done a look kind of a little bit more murky green and I did enjoy it. You can go different routes. I feel like this color story is really inspiring, but it also makes a lot of sense. I think it's really fun. It has really challenged me a little bit. It has gotten me a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but still the looks I've done with it have been really easy to do. Then this was also the first year that I tried the Beauty Bay formula. This is the first Beauty Bay palette that I've tried, and so far it's the only one. I haven't tried another Beauty Bay palette. We'll see about it next year, but this is the Botanical palette by Beauty Bay, and I did really enjoy it. I really like the shimmers in here. I've done a lot of really pretty looks with it. I love kind of like the softness. I love the different shades. It's really a fun color story that is a little bit out there. We have a little bit of clay tones. We have a little bit more burgundy purple. We have some cool tones, some gray tones. Really love this gray quad over here. Done some really nice looks with that. I think this is a really beautiful color story. I did really like working with it. I think the shimmers are really beautiful. I felt like this was pretty inspiring. I do wish that we had maybe a little bit more depth, but I could really get on with this palette. Then we have the Mighty Monster palette by Annette and Owen's Eye. I did really enjoy this palette when it first came out. I did a few pretty cute looks with it. I love a color story that is kind of like half neutral, half colorful. That is this. And you can do a really cute kind of like purple look with this. You can do something a little bit more teal, a little bit more cool tone neutral. There is nothing wrong with this palette, with this color story. I think it's fun, but I haven't really felt inclined to reach for it again. That's why it's a little bit lower. And this one was also a little bit of a surprising palette. This is the Glamnatrix Cosmetics Barely Basic Eyeshadow palette, and I didn't think I was really gonna love it. Then I saw so many raving reviews, and I thought, maybe this could be more for me than I'm thinking, because also I saw some people use these shades and they didn't pull orangey, they pulled more red, which is something that I do like more. Like when a neutral is a little bit more warm, I'd rather have it be red than kind of like yellowy orange. So I did end up taking the risk and I did end up really liking this. I feel like the formulas are really nice. I do really love combining these shades. Like it's laid out a very like orderly. You can do kind of like monotone looks. But you can also really easily mix and match these tones because there's something about kind of like the undertones and the softness of them where they blend really easily together. I love the shimmers in here. I think this is a fun palette. It's not my perfect color story, but it also challenges me a little bit to do some different things, to take a little bit maybe of a like warmer green to maybe add a little bit of a warmer like reddish brown. It is kind of like right on the edge of, is it too different or is it kind of like challenging me and making me think in different ways about makeup. I feel like the quality once again is really beautiful. I have really enjoyed this palette. It is just that other color stories are a little bit more perfect for me. Then I have here the Kiko Milano Gloss Supreme Gloss Dome Multi Finish Eyeshadow Palette in 01 Over Earth Reflections, and this one I've really enjoyed. I just think that the tones in here are really beautiful. I love the different options. I love the purple with kind of like the mauve and the brown, and we have some really beautiful shimmers in here, some really beautiful mattes. It's all working really well. I've done some really nice looks with it. This is just a really beautiful, really nice palette. It's just a combination of shades that is a little bit different, it is a little bit fun, but just still makes a lot of sense. It's still really easy to create looks. The formulas in here I've really enjoyed. This is a great palette. Then I have here the three Kiko Milano and Sarah Sampaio eyeshadow palettes. This is a collab that they did this year, and I've really been enjoying these. So first up we have here Dazzling Daydream, which is kind of like a neutral, soft, rosy color story. The shimmers in here are really nice, and mattes in here blend and work really well. This is a 5 pan that doesn't give you a lot of options, but this is what I mean when I don't mind not getting a lot of options when it's like a more neutral color story. Like this is giving me exactly what I want, and also it's just 5 colors, so it's not like giving me a full palette of 12, 16 shades and just getting one look. I think this is really nice. It's a little bit more on the expensive side for Kiko Milano. These were like 26, 27 euros, but the formula of it is really beautiful. Then we also have the Dazzling Sunset palette. We have some kind of like neutral shades for crease, like neutral mattes, and then some really nicely shifting shimmers, really beautiful shimmers in here. I thought this was a beautiful palette, really enjoyed it. Once again, a pretty neutral look, but it's a little bit more interesting in the shifts of the shimmers. And then this next one is, I think, the most interesting one of the bunch. This one is the Dazzling Drama one, and it's just really cool. We have some really kind of like smoky purples. We have this cool toned shade that is really beautiful, and then this green. This one is a little bit more out there, a little bit more outside of the box. It's challenging me a little bit more. I love that there's one palette in the range that is a little bit more special, and I do really enjoy this type of color story. Then next up I have here the Cool Trolls palette by Cosmic Beauty. This was my first time trying the Cosmic Beauty formula. I also have another palette that is coming up in a little bit from this brand, but this one, I just think that this color story is super fun. I love the formulas, I love the packaging, I just love kind of like what you pay and what you get. I think it's great. I have done some really nice looks with this. The reason that this one is a little bit lower is the color story. Like, I do love the color story, but at the same time, this is not something that I reach into time and time and time again. I just have to be realistic. It's a lot of blues, it's a lot of grays, and that is not really like my go-to. I think it's absolutely beautiful, but it's just not something I see myself going into enough to rank it higher. Like, I love having this in my collection, but the other one, I've been reaching for that one more. Then I have here the Unearthly Cosmetics Spring Magic Eyeshadow Palette. I tried this really late in the year because I believe it took a while to get the monolith, and I was thinking if I wanted to try it. It's a little bit more on the expensive side. I do really love this color story in this palette. I love the rosy tones that we have in here. I love the cool tone neutrals that we have in here. I think it's a really fun palette. I think it's a little lower because we have so many blues in here. And even though I love a blue look from time to time, it's not gonna be like something that I do enough. And also, these are really bright blues, and for me they don't really like go with the rest of the palette enough. I think this would have been way higher if this was the palette, like pinks and cool tone neutrals. That would have been perfect. Of course, I knew what I was getting myself into. I love still having these blues in the palette. I do like doing some more different colorful looks from time to time, but not that much. Then I have here the last two, the Icon palettes by Makeup Revolution. These are my favorites, and I think this one is gonna be ranked a little lower, and this is the one in the True Icon. The reason that I'm ranking this so high, even though it's kind of like a warm neutral palette, and that's not really my style, is because the shimmers in here are absolutely out of this world amazing. These shimmers are so beautiful, so kind of like dimensional, shifty, sparkly, absolutely stunning, and I can just look past the fact that there are some shades in here that are maybe really up my alley, but I think honestly, if I kind of like think this one away, like the shades are pretty like somewhat rosy, which I do like. I just think the quality in this is beautiful. It is a copy of the Patrick Ta palette, is that right? The Patrick Ta Major Dimension palette, I think. I haven't tried that palette, and honestly I don't really care about the fact that this is a dupe. I just think that this is absolutely amazing quality. I love kind of like the depth that we have in these mattes. I've done some really beautiful looks with this. I just can't deny how good this is. And then my favorite of the bunch is definitely the Enchanted Icon eyeshadow palette. This is the rosy cool tone palette with really nice shifty ethereal shimmers that are just super fun. I can do kind of like a cool tone neutral look. I can do more of a smoky purplish look. It is just a lovely palette with some really nice textures. I've done some really beautiful looks with this. One of my favorite looks that I've done this year was with this eyeshadow palette, and I can't deny the looks. Like, sometimes I don't really know where to rank something, but then if I think about the looks and how much I love them, like, that is the factor that really sets the spot, the place for a palette. And that was the fact with this one as well. Like, the looks, so stunning. And then this one I tried pretty recently. This is the Molten Metals by GlossGods, and honestly, this is just a really beautiful neutral palette with different undertones, beautiful shimmers. I love the contrast that we get with this lighter matte. You can use it as an inner corner highlight. Just the tones and the shimmers all are very different, beautiful undertones. The only thing I would say is that matte and brush, like these two mattes, are a little similar-ish, but I do love kind of like the mix of kind of like warm tones and neutrals. That is what this is giving me. I love how much sense this makes, but still makes me feel a little bit creative. I also love that this is not a true black. It's just a very dark gray. It's a little bit more of a charcoal shade. This is a stunning palette. I really love the looks that I've done with this. It was easy to use. It was beautiful. It was impactful. It really packed a punch, which I think is really important. Then another brand that I tried for the first time this year is Fantasy Cosmetica, and this is the Enchanted Autumn eyeshadow palette. I love the packaging and the vibe of this so much, and that really ensures that this is pretty high up in the ranking. I think this is done very well, but at the same time, it's not a perfect color story. I love the vibe that I like get from this, like the feelings that this gives me. It's really truly autumn, but it's not those standard super warm shades, which I love. I love having a very autumnal palette in my collection that has shades that I love to wear. So that is why I'm really excited about this. This would have been perfect if we had a little bit more contrast in the mattes, in the shimmers, like if there were maybe some deeper shades and then some lighter shades. I do like to have some contrast, and I do feel like for me the shade Dogwood doesn't really fit in with the palette. It seems a little bit like the odd one out. Like if it were a little bit more like a deep purple, would have made more sense to me. I did do a look with these two shades yesterday for my favorites of the year video. I used these two shades, and I also used the mints from the Singe Galactic Visitor eyeshadow palette. Really enjoyed that. This is a beautiful palette, a beautiful formula. I really love the shimmers. The mattes work really well, and I can forgive this palette for not being perfect in a color story because it's just the vibes. The vibes are immaculate. All right, we're getting into the top 10-ish, I think. Let me count. Okay, 15. Top 15. We have 15 amazing palettes here that I really love. We're gonna see some themes. We're gonna see some themes in these palettes. I have a very distinct taste that I have developed this past year, and probably before that, but I'm really sure of my taste since this year, since trying so many eyeshadow palettes. So next up we have on spot 15 the Flower Nose Strawberry Rococo Series 5-color eyeshadow palette in GL1 Star Moon Strawberry. This is such a fun, colorful, yet wearable purple palette. I really love the different tones that we have in the matte. Really love the two shimmers here. Like, there's so much going on here for a 5-pan. I love the formulas in this. And just every time I wore this palette, I love the look so much. It's just a little bit of a different undertone. It's a little fun. It's a little different for me and the purples that I wear. Like this kind of like bluish purple takes it to another level. I just thought this palette was absolutely amazing, beautiful, and just a little bit different from my collection, but also for Flower Nose. I love it when they do something a little bit different. Then the second palette that I've tried from Glam Shop was this The Violetem eyeshadow palette. I never pronounce any of the names correctly. However, I do really try. And I love the packaging of this. I love the fall vibes. This is absolutely beautiful. And then the color story of this is just so up my alley. I love a half colorful, half neutral palette where the neutrals are giving me kind of like the standard cool tone neutral look that I long for in my life, in my daily life. And then for kind of like filming, for doing something a little bit more creative, for combining, I just want a few colors that kind of like go with those cool tone neutrals. I think this is a beautiful color story. I love the tones of the purples. I love the different formulas we have in the shimmers. I love all the options that we have in here. The darker shade is just a really dark brown, which is perfect for me. I love deepening up with this. This is a gorgeous palette. We have some kind of like iridescent satin shades that you can use in the inner corner. This is beautiful. I love this palette so much. It's giving me everything. It's giving me all the options. Maybe if this would have been like a super light pink, then it would have been like absolutely perfect, but like I'm not the one developing the palettes here, so there's not really a use like saying those kinds of things. I do think it could have been even a little higher then, because I do really love this formula. Next up we have the Spring Dragon eyeshadow palette by Honest Eye and Judy. I just think the packaging of this is absolutely beautiful, and then the inside, this is just my perfect pastel eyeshadow palette. These are pastels that lean very cool tone neutral. There's some light lilac, some light greens. I love this shade, absolutely beautiful. Love the tone of the yellow. This is such a beautiful soft like pastel eyeshadow palette, and I do really love the formula of this. I have used it a bunch. It is a great companion palette. It is just such an exciting palette for me because I do love using these tones compared with other palettes. Use them in the inner corner. I've done so many fun looks with this. It is just not like a full standalone, use it on its own kind of palette for me, but I do really love the fact that I have this in my collection and that I have a pastel eyeshadow palette that is so perfect for me. So that's why it is pretty high up in the ranking. Then this one I tried recently, and just every time I wore this palette I got so many comments saying like, what are you wearing on the eyes? The eyeshadow looks amazing. I was just looking at the eyeshadow while it was like a video about something else. This is the Cryptine Cosmetics Violet Crazy eyeshadow palette. I did get this in PR from CBeautyMall. This is just kind of similar to the color story from the Glam Shop the Feel the Time eyeshadow palette. It's kind of like half colorful, half neutral. We can do some neutral looks, you can do some purpley looks. This one just has super special, shifty, shimmery, smooth, like amazing shimmers. Like the shimmers in here are absolutely out of this world. I love the selection that we have in the mattes. I love the selection that we have in the shimmers. The only thing that I would have loved is if this were a little bit deeper. I feel like that matte is a little bit soft, like on the lid. I feel like it's a little bit on the softer side. Would have loved to see a little bit more contrast, but honestly this is basically my perfect palette. I really love it. Works really well. It all like blends really well. It's just absolutely stunning. I haven't had any issues with this creasing. I did a neutral look, wore it all day recently just to see if it would crease on me, and that didn't happen, just to be sure, because I did get some comments of people saying that this creased on them. So I don't know what that's about. I do have really oily eyelids, but I don't have hooded eyelids, so it could have something to do with that. I do really love this palette. This is just shifty, stunning, fun. I love the pop of yellow in here as well. This is great. Next up we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Night Terror color palette, and this is a 9-pan palette that they had in their Night Terror mystery box. I think this is such a fun, well done purple palette. I love how it kind of has all the different tones. It even has kind of like this rosy shade, has some beautiful shimmers from light to kind of like mid-tone shifting shades. There are so many fun looks you can do with this, but all the shades do really work well together. It makes a lot of sense. I think this is kind of like the perfect combination of shades you could have done with a 9-pan monochromatic purple palette. Also, I just love the formula by Unearthly. Like, this is amazing. I love it so much. This is a beautiful palette. I really enjoy it. Then this year I tried the Kiko Milano Master eyeshadow palettes. And these are the highest ranking Kiko Milano palettes that I've tried. And I think my favorite Kiko Milano palettes that I've ever tried. Like, these palettes are really beautiful. Kiko Milano wasn't really clear if they launched this year, but I cannot remember seeing them before this year. So we have 01 and 02. I grabbed 02 first. I do think that this one is the one that is a little bit lower for me because it's a little bit more on the warm tone side, but honestly you can do really like neutral, slightly leaning cool looks. The thing with these palettes is they go from light to really deep. The formulas in this are amazing, different shimmer formulas, a really beautiful satin kind of like shiny matte formula that I do really enjoy, which I feel like the mattes blend out on really beautifully. It just all works really well. I love the textures, love the shimmers, love everything that is going on in here. Like, these palettes make a lot of sense, and I think the formula is really luxurious, beautiful, and the quality for like the 22 euros that you pay for this is really great. The only thing that would have made me rank these higher is if these were a little bit more interesting color stories. But the fact that these are so affordable and I just kept going into these and into these and into these make these rank a little bit like high, pretty high. So my favorite one of the two is gonna be 01. This one is a little bit more cool toned. This one is a little bit more like versatile even, because you have kind of like this almost purpley burgundy corner over here. We have some gray, we have some brown, we have some different tones in the shimmers. I think this is a really fun, beautiful palette. And as I said, I've just used these a lot, and that is why, even though I don't think that this formula really like compares to indie per se, like it's not an Unearthly Cosmetics quality palette, I just think that these really like have a place in my heart. Like, I think about these a lot. I was really impressed by these, and these are just the palettes that I think about when I think about like what I've tried and loved this year. Then this palette I tried really recently, but I have been using it a bunch and I have been really enjoying it, and this is a formula that I know that I really love. So this is a Lunar Beauty Day and Night palette. These are magnetized eyeshadow palettes, and one of them is more day appropriate and one of them is more night appropriate. I think that the formula in here is really beautiful. I love the shimmers. I think the shimmer formula and just the shades that these have, it is absolutely stunning, and I've just been going back into these. I've been using the shade Magnitude a lot. This is just the type of palette that I use in my daily life, on the day-to-day, and it has been a busy time doing a lot of like things with people, like social events, and I've just been reaching for this one over and over and over again. And of course we have the Night palette, and this is a palette that gives you some options to deepen up, some more sultry shimmers. I love this kind of like silvery shade. I love deepening up that Magnitude shade with Shady By, and then using Scene Stealer kind of like as the smoky lash line shade. I just think that the formula of this is really nice, and I just have been reaching for it a bunch, and I cannot deny, even though it is sort of a boring color story, that I really enjoy this. Okay, in the sixth spot, we have a little bit of a shocker. I was shocked, and I have a feeling that you might be shocked as well. This is the Revolution Forever Flawless Cherry Rebel eyeshadow palette, and honestly, this has really blown me away. I have enjoyed using this palette so much. I love the way this looks on the eye. I love the different formulas. As I said, I do think the Forever Flawless eyeshadow formula is really good, but then this also has a color story that just really inspires me so much, and that I really loved using. So the thing with this color story is that it's kind of like a half neutral, half colorful palette. We have some berry shades, we have some purpley shades. It's kind of like cool tones into purples and mauves, berries. And then we have some really interesting light shades. Like this salty shade, it's kind of like a iridescent shifting purple shifting shade, really beautiful in the inner corner. And I think the thing that really made me fall in love with this palette the most is this shade Full Moon. So this is a really light, bright, really cool toned yellow that has a slight bit of green in it. It's such an interesting undertone, and I love it with these reds. I love it in the inner corner. It is so pigmented. It is so beautifully brightening. I have just been enjoying the looks that I've done with this so much. It's just giving me the options that I want. It's giving me reds, which I usually don't really go for, but because it is in a palette that makes so much sense to me, it's in a color story that makes so much sense to me, I do love to go into this reds and kind of like combine it all. I just think that this color story is super fun, and I've really loved the looks that I've done with this. I just can't deny it. Like, in a way, it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, the looks just tell me what is going on. Then in the fourth and fifth spot, I have the two remaining Avatar: The Last Airbender and Lethal Cosmetics palettes. The fifth spot is going to the Water eyeshadow palette, and this is just such a beautiful, stunning blue palette. The fact that this has kind of like this darker blue, and then this darker brown, and then this UA shade, which is a little bit more of a cool tone champagne, it's just giving me some options beyond just doing like a full-blown blue look. I love this palette so much. I think the quality in here is absolutely amazing. As I told you, blue is not my go-to, but what I do really love is this kind of like cornflower blue. That is something that I do really enjoy. So we have this kind of like lighter, airy shimmers, the cornflower blue, the light matte here. We have the brown. Like, this is giving me so many options. It's giving me the type of blue looks that I really enjoy. And it's just absolutely stunning. I think Lethal Cosmetics did such a good job with this. And because of this, I was just so excited to see what else it would come out with. Like, this is absolutely stunning. And at first I would maybe think that this wouldn't be like my top 5 palette, but it's just, there's something about it. There's something about the way this is laid out that makes so much sense to me. And then in the 4th spot is the Air palette. And honestly, this isn't the perfect palette, but what happens with this palette, the looks that I've done with this palette have inspired me so much and have made me feel so beautiful that I did decide to put this in the 4th spot. So this palette has some really beautiful cool tone neutral looks in it. We have this really beautiful light icy blue shimmer, this really nice butter yellow matte. There is just so much going on here that I absolutely love, and the looks that I've done with that I've absolutely loved as well. Like, I've enjoyed them so much. This Gyatso shade is just one of the most beautiful shimmers I have in my collection. It is kind of like this taupey brown going to a purple. It is stunning. The thing that I am not really going to be using in this is this Egg Custard Tart and Council of Elders. These are just not shades that I am going to be using. I totally understand that they are in this palette. I am not faulting the palette for that, obviously, because this is my top 4. I just love everything else what is going on here. I just love the looks that I got from this so much, and just the formulas are amazing, and I can definitely see myself going into this time and time again to do a look with these neutral tones. It is just so beautiful. It feels a little weird to rank this palette so high, but once again, I've just been really thinking about the looks that I've done and how much I've loved them, and in that sense, honestly, this could have been first if I would have just looked at that. Okay. This one is a little bit of a shocker. I feel like there are so many shockers in this ranking. I'm still shocked. And I feel like Marlie a year ago would be really shocked, like, seeing all of this. And maybe even a year from now, I will be like, what was I even saying in this ranking? But this is just really how I'm feeling right now. So in the 3rd spot, I'm gonna put a warm toned palette. A warm tone neutral palette. This is the Cosmo Beauty Nudetrals palette, and honestly, when I bought the neutrals and the cool trolls, I thought that this was gonna be my least favorite. But I was just like, let's just try it out. Let's see if I like it. I think it will be fun to do a video with both of the palettes, with a look with both of the palettes. And in the end, this ended up being my favorite. What I really love about this palette is that the mattes aren't actually super warm. They are pretty neutral, so I can really easily get a look with a neutral in the crease that is a type of tone that I like. And then we have this bottom row. Not the black. Don't look at the black. That doesn't exist for me. This bottom row I really love so much. And then this bottom row combined with this top two, like here, the satin shade and the chic shade, love so much. At this moment, it doesn't happen that much anymore that I think about a specific shadow in a palette that I want to use. But this is really something, when I was testing it out, I was thinking about that combination so much. I love it so much. I think the shimmers in here are beautiful. We have some really shifty shades. The mattes blend really well. This is absolutely beautiful, amazing. It inspired me so much. Like, there are a few tones in here that aren't perfect for me that I am not really gonna wear, but once again, the looks that I've done with this were just so inspiring to me that I had to put this at spot 3. If you want to know why things look a little bit different, I was filming so long that I had to change my battery. We have 2 more palettes to go. This palette that I'm gonna be talking about right now, I feel like it could even end up higher if I have a little bit more time with it. It is pretty new in my collection, and honestly, I hadn't really expected to rank it so high, but when I had it in my hands, I was looking over at my table with all of the palettes, I just couldn't deny the spot that it ended up at. It just felt right to put it here. And in the second spot, we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Spellcraft eyeshadow palette. This is a palette. It has such a beautiful packaging. I really, really love what they did with this. It has a clasp. It feels very like fantasy witchy like, which I do love. I mean, Lord of the Rings is my favorite movie ever, and this is giving me like witchy Lord of the Rings vibes. And then when you open it up, this is just my type of color story, and you know I love the formula by Unearthly Cosmetics that they have been doing since the Avatar palettes. So we have kind of like a neutral-ish, purplish, kind of like half neutral, half colorful palette. I love purples. I love the cool toned grays that we have here that we can combine with kind of like the mauve tones. The shimmers in here are absolutely beautiful, absolutely amazing. You know I won't use the black, but we have this really dark purple here that I find really cool. I had a little bit of trouble blending it in that first video, but I did another look with it and I didn't have any issues, so I think that was a fluke. I just think the quality, the color story, it all makes so much sense to me. I love the different tones. I love that you can go a little bit more neutral, you can go a little bit more purple, you can even go a little bit berry if you go into this one. It is just an absolutely stunning palette. Shade Eldritch is such a beautiful wet look on the eye. I love to also have a little bit more purpley blue, a little bit more like soft purple. This shade Occult is also so beautiful. This is also a palette that I would go into for kind of like a simple look, just one matte in the crease and then a shimmer on the lid. This is just making so much sense to me, and the Unearthly Cosmetics formula that they have been doing, it is just so good, and I'm just so excited that there is a European indie brand that is now doing these super shifty, beautiful shimmers, and they are right next door to me. I'm in the Netherlands, they are in Germany, and they are also sold at Boozy Shop, which is a web shop in the Netherlands that I order from a lot. Like basically all my makeup comes from there, so that is also like playing into this. I'm really, really excited about this. I love the fact that this is a little bit more of a like fleshed out color story of that amazing formula, and I just feel like all of the shades in here I basically can use except for the black, but there are so many options for me in here, and I just love this type of color story. Okay, we've made it to the first spot. I'm gonna give you a hint. I've been wearing the palette on my eyes with a little bit of an addition of a Catrice Space Glam Chrome eyeshadow in the inner corner, but the rest is the palette that I'm going to be talking about. This, I think, is the first palette or one of the first palettes that I have tried this year, and it was also already at spot number 1 in my half of the year ranking. Have you guessed it? So at spot number 1, I am putting the Unearthly Cosmetics Dreamer eyeshadow palette. And I feel like this is just everything I want in an eyeshadow palette. First up, packaging, really cool, really beautiful. I love the amount of shades we have in here, and then the color story is exactly what I want in life. I couldn't have thought of it better myself. The rosy tones, the pink tones, the purples, the dark navy blue, and then the grays, and then just these cooler tone neutrals. This is me in a palette, and as I've told you, I love the Unearthly Cosmetics formula, and just this color story inspires me so much. I love the shifts in the shades. I love combining rosy tones and purples with grays. Like, this is a little harsh for me, but then combined with all of this, I think it's amazing. I think it's so fun. You have some true depth in here with this slumber shade and then this night owl shade. Like, it's giving me everything. It's not giving me a black. It's not giving me any shades in here that I wouldn't use. I love this palette so much. I love the looks that I've done with this. I, at the start of the year, did a look kind of like with the rosy tones, but then I deepened it up with the gray, and it was just the look of my dreams. It was just exactly what I want, and I just keep thinking about that look still. I feel like I have to do that again. Like today I did something a little bit different than what I've done with this palette before. I used the shade Tranquil on the lid. I used the rosy shades in the crease and then the shade Night Owl to deepen that up. I kept it a little bit like simple and soft. I do love the kind of like translucent look that you get with this purpley shimmer. I think this is a really fun, like almost neutral look, but it's also a little fun and colorful. This is just my ultimate palette. This is Absolutely amazing. My absolute favorite. I actually am planning to get a little bit more in my favorites, like back into my favorites right now, because to prepare for this video, I have tried basically all of the palettes that I still had in my to review basket. So I'm free now, for now, to do what I want to do. So I'm gonna do some looks with my favorites. I'm very excited for that. Let me know if you tried any of these palettes. What was your favorite palette of the year? I'm gonna be ending the video here. I'm sure it was a long one. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye bye.